Excuse me. All right. We grab a drink and we'll get started. Welcome to the live tonight. I'm excited to be here again this week. I'm amazed that you guys continue to show up, but we get viewers every week, both on YouTube and on Facebook. I think you all on both platforms know that I live stream on both platforms. So those of you, there are some of you that are here with me tonight on YouTube, but there are also people that are with me tonight on Facebook. And one of the things that surprised me, I just started doing it on both platforms just a few weeks ago. And one of the things that has surprised me is the difference in interaction between people on Facebook and people on YouTube. People on YouTube are a lot more talkative. You guys jump in here and have things to say, comments to make. You're talking to each other here in the chat. That doesn't happen much on Facebook at all. And from what I've read and from people that I've talked to, what I'm experiencing with that is pretty common. The people that are on YouTube are a lot more interactive and a lot more talkative. And I'm enjoying that. I'm enjoying having the conversation with everybody on YouTube. And if you guys jump in and start talking on Facebook, I'll be interacting with you too. But you guys haven't been doing that very well. So, anyway, we'll continue to be live on both platforms moving forward. I'm glad to be here tonight. And yeah, we are going to be talking about a topic tonight. We're going to talk about something that I call drift, how we slowly move away from recovery. And what's had me thinking about this, I can't remember if I said anything along these lines last week, but one of the things that's had me thinking about this is there's been a discussion going on in my in-person group that I attend on Monday evenings. I know I've shared with you guys before that when I check in, it's kind of a joke. The guys expect me to say something. They get after me if I don't say something along these lines. But when I check in on Monday nights, I usually check in by saying something along the lines of, I'm Ron, and this is my safe place. This is where I have family, where I can be open and honest. And if I live to be 100, one of you young punks will be pushing me in here in a wheelchair. I'll still be coming to this meeting every Monday night. And my comments there have sparked a discussion between some guys in the Monday night group. And apparently it was going on without me being involved. I didn't know the conversation was going on until just a week or two ago. And somebody told me, said, yeah, said some of the guys here, they like it when you check in like that, but man, they don't like that idea of coming to group here for a long period of time. And said a lot of the guys are looking to get whatever they have to get done, and then go on with life and forget this recovery stuff. And that's had me thinking, it's had me talking with some people. And what we're going to talk about tonight is going to be along those lines. It'll be covering a couple areas, but that's what's kind of prompted me to be thinking about that. And so I'm going to start with a question for everybody. Have you ever looked back after a relapse or maybe after a period of depression or a season when you've struggled, you haven't really relapsed, but you've struggled. Have any of you ever looked back after a period like that, a season of struggle, a time of relapse, and realized that the struggle and the relapse didn't happen overnight? It's not like we were walking along and all of a sudden we acted out. All of a sudden we relapsed. We didn't fall off of a cliff. What we did is we drifted. Um, and so I think of it kind of like, I call it drifting, kind of like a boat analogy. When I was young, my dad liked to fish. He'd get a cooler of beer and a boat, and we'd go to a lake, and we would fish. But it was really easy to be out on the lake. We'd be fishing, we'd be talking, things would be going on. And one of the lakes that we used to go to was fed by a creek. And then on the other end, there was a dam, but there was an overflow there, and water went over the overflow and down um, into a creek down below. And I can remember it'd be real easy to get caught up in talking and fishing and what was going on. And all of a sudden, we'd realize, man, we're drifting pretty close to this overflow. We're drifting pretty close to this dam. And we'd have to fire up the trolling motor and move ourselves away from there because we had drifted close. And if we had gone over that, we'd have turned the boat over. We'd lost a lot of our stuff, maybe been hurt. And we didn't plan on going over the overflow or going over the dam. We didn't plan on that. But it was easy to get caught up in everything else that was going on and to drift closer to the danger than we expected. And I think that's the way that it works a lot of times for us in recovery. Um, Most people don't intentionally steer towards trouble or towards destruction, towards relapse. We just stop paying attention to where the current's taking us and to what we're drifting towards. And so, drift, a definition of drift would be the drift would be a gradual movement away. In recovery, drift would be a gradual movement away from the practices, the relationships, and the principles that we have used to help us stay healthy. And we're going to touch on that from several directions tonight. What I found in that discussion in my Monday night group and with these guys that are in there, and I've seen this before, and to be honest, I had this line of thought for the first several years I was in recovery. I entered into recovery. I'd gotten into trouble, got into legal trouble, and I ended up in recovery with the idea of setting a new world speed record for recovery, getting everything taken care of and done, and then being able to walk away from it and never have to think about it again. That was my initial approach to the idea of recovery. It was a mindset of, I'm going to get sober. I'll fix my issues. I'll learn the tools, and then that'll be done. And I'll leave that behind and I'll just go on with life. And I won't ever have to think about that again. But life itself is a journey. In life as a whole, we don't arrive at a point where we just stop and exist. And I think many of us find it. I think a lot of people, even as they enter into retirement. I see you in here, Richard. And when I first met you, man, you were retired. You'd been retired, but you were going back to school. You were in college down at Ivy Tech. And I don't know how many degrees you've got. You weren't going to school because you were looking for work or because you thought you were going to use what you were learning on a job. But I think that you recognized that you needed to keep your mind occupied and that it was a good thing for you to still be learning, still be progressing, still continuing to move forward. And I really respected that about you. And so in recovery, there are things that we need to experience recovery. And we never arrive at a place where, for instance, are we ever going to arrive at a place where we no longer need relationships, where we no longer need community? We'll never experience that. Community is a built in need that's present in all of us. We're never going to arrive at a place where we're able to do everything on our own and where we don't need support from others. We will never arrive at a place where we don't continue to need growth. Um, and even we'll never arrive. Can we ever become spiritual enough that we arrive at a place where we no longer need God? That's not a part of life. That's not a part of who we are and how we're created. And in fact, I'd present that the scripture consistently, all through the Bible, Old Testament and New Testament, uses journey language as it talks about life. The scripture consistently talks about walking with God. It continually, consistently talks about following Christ. It uses terminology like we run the race or we're pressing on. There's always movement and always growth in our lives. We're never described in the scripture as arriving. Life, according to scripture, is a lifelong journey. And so I think what we need to see and what we need to begin to understand, a better way to think about things, is that recovery is not a destination that we're shooting to arrive at. Recovery is a way of traveling through life. It's a way of traveling through the rest of our life. So, for many of us, as we enter into recovery, we begin to experience some success. Maybe we begin to experience some sobriety. We begin to get some of our emotions and some of our feelings under control. We're not struggling with anger, maybe as much as we have in the past, or anxiety and fear. And for many of us, we come to a place where we unconsciously conclude, I think I've arrived. I don't need this anymore. And so there are tools that we pick up in recovery. For instance, most of you that are here and that are listening, you've maybe used tools like regular check-ins, whether you're checking in with somebody else or whether you're checking in with yourself through journaling or something of that nature. You have had to develop a habit of reaching out, making a phone call, asking for help. In recovery, one of the things that we all learn is the importance of vulnerability, of being open and honest with somebody else about our struggles, about our weaknesses. In recovery, we begin to practice self awareness. We begin to recognize who we really are and what our struggles really are. And we learn the importance of participating in community. The idea that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, the opposite of addiction is community. And so, but as we continue on in recovery, many of us come to a point where we're experiencing some success, and we maybe come to a point where we unconsciously conclude, man, I'm in a pretty good place. I don't know that I need to be doing all these things anymore. Now, we don't conclude that because we're rebellious. Um, we conclude that because we've experienced a little success and we've become comfortable. And so I'll just share a story. Um, when I got out of prison, I was required to go to group therapy. I was required to go to a group. A therapist by the name we called her in a meeting I attended, we called her Miss. Um, my mind just went blank. I had her name on the tip of my lips, Connie, Miss Connie, and Miss Connie led our group. And I do have to be honest, that group for me was court ordered. It was a condition of my parole and my probation. I had to attend that group. I had to pay a fee to attend that group. And if I didn't attend and I didn't pay the fee, I could be violated. It could get me in trouble. And I still have most of the notes and a lot of the material from that group in some boxes out in the garage or in the closet here. And there were good things that I learned in that group. Um, Good things that I learned in that group. But there are a lot of things I didn't learn because I was being told that I had to attend. And so, but I was a part of that group for almost 4 years, just maybe 6 weeks shy of 4 years. I was in that group. And when I finally was told that I wasn't going to have to attend anymore, I remember Miss Connie gave me my last date. She said, "This is the last time you have to be here." But then she went on to add, "But you know, you could continue to come to the group. You could continue to come to meetings. And if you wanted to, you don't have to stop. These things are good for you and you can keep coming." And I was like, yeah, no, I've had enough of this. I'm done with it. And I left that group determined that I would never attend a meeting again. And I felt like I had done my time in groups. I was in a pretty good place. I was doing pretty well. And I'm past that. I will never do a group again. And I didn't do a group. I was not involved in any kind of a group for quite a while. I was involved in church and that kind of thing. But over a period of a year or two, I began to notice that there were things from that group that had been beneficial for me and things from that group that I missed a little bit. I attended church regularly and I had friends at church, but I had a past in prison and I had the crime that I had committed. And in that group, I had found a safe place where I could be honest about my struggles. I could be honest about my past, my current struggles when something wasn't going well. And I could talk openly because the other men in that group came from a similar background. And in that group, I didn't receive judgment and I didn't receive shame. And while I was attending church regularly, and I still attend church regularly, the same church I've attended ever since I got out of prison. And I have good friends there, and I love my church. But I didn't have that same safety and that same freedom. I wasn't finding that with people in my church that I had found in that group. And after a period of a couple of years, I actually began to look for a place where I could experience that community again, where I could experience that kind of safety. And I ended up getting involved with a group of men, and I'm involved in a group now. That's where my Monday night meeting comes into play. I'm involved in a group now where I feel safe to be open and honest about anything that I'm struggling with, anything that's going on with me. And so, I think what we have to be careful of, for those of us that are in recovery, we can confuse the idea of treatment with the idea of recovery. And the idea of treatment, there are all kinds of, in the area here where I'm at, there are all kinds of treatment programs. There are 10-day programs. You go check into a facility and you spend 10 days, 30-day programs, 90-day programs. A friend of mine, one of her sons is in a program in Ohio that is something like 8 months. It's an addiction program, a long-term addiction program. And he'll be there for a total of about 8 months. But there is an end date on that. And with treatment, there is an end date. We go into a program, we stay there, we follow the rules, we work that program. But treatment is something that has a completion date. That's treatment. Recovery, on the other hand, doesn't have a completion date. Recovery, I think, it's better for us to think of recovery as a way of living. Is what I'm saying making sense there? Um, and so, for instance, going to a gym or fitness, we can use that as an analogy. Nobody starts going to the gym or starts eating better or doing healthy things and arrives at a point where they say, okay, I'm healthy now, so I never need to exercise again. I never need to eat healthy again because I've arrived. That's not how fitness works. Now, it may be that while we are trying to lose weight, that we are really follow a much stricter diet. And when we arrive at our goal weight, we might make some adjustments and we begin to eat a little more or a little differently. But what we don't do is go back to the lifestyle that we had before we began to work on that healthy lifestyle. The habits that create the health and the well being in us maintain that health and well being. And it's the same kind of thing in the area of recovery. So, what I want to talk about, what I want to focus in for a little bit, is I'm going to talk specifically about groups. And part of that is because in my discussion with some guys from my Monday group, their focus is specifically on a group. But I think I'm going to be talking about groups, but the concept that I'm talking about with groups can be applied to anything that we're working or that we're doing in recovery, whether it's groups or check-ins or whether it's other daily disciplines that are present in our life. And so in my Monday group, some guys have said, Do I have to go to meetings forever? I don't want to go to meetings forever. I want to do what I've got to do and be done with them. And what I want to present is that that type of question is the wrong question. The better question is, and this goes back to that, I make this statement every week. I'm going to make it here again tonight because what I'm talking about ties into this, the idea that behind every behavior is a feeling. Behind every feeling is a need. When we have needs in our life that are unmet, those needs are generally healthy needs, they're valid needs, but they're not being met. Not meeting those needs creates feelings inside of us, feelings of distress, feelings of loneliness, sadness, fear, maybe feelings of depression. And they that unmet need creates feelings. And then in response to that feeling, that's where our behaviors and our addictions, our compulsive behaviors come from. When we turn to alcohol, when we turn to drugs, when we turn to sex or porn or overeating or gambling or whatever it may be, we turn to that behavior because we are experiencing feelings that are coming from these unmet needs. And those feelings scare us and make us uncomfortable, and we don't know what to do with them. And so we turn to a behavior to numb out or to overpower those feelings that we're experiencing. So the question is not, do I have to go to meetings forever? It's the wrong question. A better question is, what need is this meeting helping me meet? We're going to a meeting because we've had a behavior problem, drugs, alcohol, porn, and sex, overeating, whatever it is, Gamblers Anonymous, whatever it is. And we go to a meeting to find help with our struggle with the behavior because of feelings that we're experiencing. But the behavior is stemming from an unmet need. And so what we do is we look back to the core and we ask, what is the need? What's the need that this meeting is filling that we were using our behavior to escape from? So, a recovery group, for instance. I know many of you that are here and that watch this regularly are part of various meetings. Some of you go to AA, some to Celebrate Recovery, some to Samson Society, some to some other meetings that are out there. There are all kinds of meetings out there today. So what is the need that that meeting is meeting for us? A recovery group may provide connection. We're in a community with other people that are struggling in the same way with the same issues. And so the meeting might provide us with community and meets that need for connection, for belonging. It may be that inside that group, inside that meeting or that group, that we find accountability. We need structure. We need accountability. It may be that we need encouragement. We need somebody. For me, when I first started attending meetings, really it amazed me because when I finally became brave enough to begin to share, one of the things that I noticed was men around the room. And I knew that a lot of them had not experienced the exact same things I had. Maybe they hadn't been to prison. Maybe they were struggling in other ways that I didn't struggle with. But as I shared my struggles, I watched men around that table. As I shared, I watched their heads begin to nod. And something inside my heart said, They understand what I'm talking about in my struggle. It provided me with encouragement. Meetings provide me with a place where I can be honest and open. They provide me with support. They can provide a sense of purpose. They give me a place where I can be known, where I can be real. The biggest fear that everyone struggles with, and I know that's a big statement, but the biggest fear across the board that people struggle with is the fear of, if anybody really knew me, if anybody really knew what went on in my head, what went on in my heart, nobody would have anything to do with me. Have you ever struggled with that? Have you ever experienced that thought? If anybody really knew me, nobody would have anything to do with me. We need a place where we can be honest and real and where we can be known. So, where I'm going with this is that the group, that Monday night group that I tell guys, if I live to be 100, one of you will be pushing me in here in a wheelchair. That group is not a need for me. It is not the need that I'm trying to meet in a healthy way. The group is a healthy way for me to meet my needs. The need itself still remains. I need that community. For me, I need community. I need a safe place where when I'm sharing, I'm not scared to death that everybody around the table is thinking, oh my God, what a pervert. He is so messed up. I'm so glad I'm not as sick as he is. I need a safe place where I can be accepted with my struggles. That need remains in me. And to be honest with you, that need will be a part of my life for the rest of my life. If I live to be 100, that need will still be present. The group doesn't create the need. The group is what I use to meet that need. Human beings never outgrow the need for connection. If you think that it's possible for people to outgrow the need for connection, visit a nursing home. Sit with people in a nursing home for a few minutes and watch how they respond. They need connection desperately. Human beings never outgrow the need for accountability. I need somebody to call me out when they see me doing things that don't make sense, when they see me making decisions that appear to be foolish. I need people around me that I trust that are going to be willing to say, hey, Ron, I don't think that's the smartest thing that you're doing right there. I'm going to need that. Human beings never outgrow the need for being known, the need for support. I don't care how smart you get. I don't care how strong you are. You're never going to arrive at a place where you don't sometimes need help. And a big thing that every human that's ever existed has is a need for purpose. Now, what do I mean by that? A need for purpose. We need something that gives us a reason to get out of bed in the morning. We need something in our life that lets us feel like, I think I'm making a difference. It might not be a big difference, but I'm making a difference in some way. And that's a need that's present inside of all of us. And those needs are always going to be there. So if we're struggling with something like thoughts of leaving a group, not attending a group any longer, the question becomes, if I leave the group, where and how will these needs be met? Because again, for me, I find many of those needs being met in my Monday night meeting. And I tell guys in that meeting, I don't expect all of you to be here if you live to be 100. I don't expect all of you to be here a year from now or 6 months from now. But here's what you have to focus on. And here's the question that you have to come to grips with. If this group is meeting a need for me and I leave the group, where and how will that need be met? And we have to be able to come up with an answer for that. Because if we don't come up with that answer, drift begins. And this applies not just to a group. Let's say that we have become accustomed to a daily discipline of daily Bible reading or daily. I know some people in AA get up and read from the big book and from some other AA devotionals every day. My daughter does that every morning, reads from some AA material every morning. And let's say we decide, I think I'm in a good spot. I don't know that I need to do this every day anymore. Question number one is, what is that discipline? What are the needs that that discipline has been meeting for me? Maybe it's been helping me with accountability with myself and with others. I've shared with others what I do, and I've invited them to ask, did you do your reading this morning? It might be providing accountability. It might be that um, I'm doing my reading and then I'm checking in with somebody about it. I'm talking to somebody about what I read. What are the needs that that discipline is meeting in my life? And if I'm going to stop that discipline, I need to understand that that need is not going to go away. So if I stop that discipline, how is that need going to be met? Because if I stop the discipline without finding a way to meet that need, drift happens. We begin to get carried by the current, and before long, we'll find ourselves being swept away. If I change this for somebody that's looking to not attend a group anymore, I know people that have attended groups. I don't, there are some groups that communicate, if you ever stop coming to group, you will relapse. You can't survive without us. I don't think that's true, but I don't think that you can survive if you don't find something else that can meet those needs. I've known people that attended groups and eventually stopped attending groups, but they had found community and found a safe place in their church or with another group. There's a friend of mine that meets at a cigar shop, a cigar lounge in town here with a group of guys. And a number of those guys have been members of AA and NA and some other groups in the past. And they don't attend those groups anymore, but they meet a couple times a week at the cigar lounge in New Albany. And they sit at the cigar lounge and they smoke cigars, but they talk honestly with each other. They talk about their struggles. They talk about their weaknesses. They talk about life. And so they don't attend to their group meeting anymore, but they've recognized the need that's present there, maybe connection, maybe accountability, a place where I can be real and be known. And what they have found is another place where that need can be met. That's what's important for us in this walk of recovery. So let's go back to this idea of drift and how drift begins. A lot of times, drift starts when we confuse the tool that we're using with the need that's present in our life. For instance, and I'm going to go back to this idea of meetings. Maybe we decide, I don't want to do a meeting every week or multiple meetings every week anymore. I don't want to do that. And here's where we make the mistake is that sometimes we make that statement, I don't need meetings anymore. But what we're really communicating, what we're really experiencing is the idea, I think I no longer need connection. I think I no longer need accountability. I think I no longer need support. I think I can do this on my own. We've just slipped into the current and we're going to be carried downstream. Because the problem is that the need hasn't disappeared. The method that we use to meet that need can change. We can choose to change the method that we use to meet the need. But many times, what we do is we stop using the tool that has helped to meet the need, and we don't find anything to replace that. And the need has never gone away. The need is still present. So here, with warning signs of drift, here's some questions for you to ask yourself if you're thinking about making changes, if you're thinking about discontinuing certain disciplines or activities, group meetings, whatever it may be. Here are a few questions that you need to ask yourself. Do I have people around me who really know what's going on in my life? Is there a place where I'm known? Who challenges me? If I begin to do something that's foolish, and I got to tell you, I do things that are foolish. I'm supposed to be old and wise. I'm old and I'm still often foolish. Who challenges me? Do I have somebody in my life that challenges me when they see me do foolish things? Who encourages me? Who speaks into my life and says, man, you're doing something good there, Ron. You're doing something good. Who encourages me? Who has permission in my life to ask me hard questions? And where do I find a relationship where I can be honest? Even when I'm thinking things that I already know are messed up. Do I have a relationship where I'm able to be honest about those things, what I'm thinking, what I'm experiencing? Where am I experiencing connection? Those are important questions. And if we find ourselves asking those questions and we don't have clear answers for each of those questions, who really knows what's going on in my life? Who challenges me? Who encourages me? Who can ask me hard questions? Where am I able to be honest? Where am I finding connection? If we do not have clear answers to those questions, then I need to be careful because drift is already happening in my life. And I would say the same thing is true for you. If you don't have clear answers to those questions, then you are drifting. Now, here's the good news. Drift, when we catch ourselves drifting in an area, that doesn't mean that we need to kick into panic mode, but it does need that we need to practice awareness. We need to be aware of those areas where we're lacking. It may be that our boat needs a little bit of repair work. It may mean that our boat needs a little bit of a course correction. And so I want to ask you tonight, we've talked about some things here. We've talked about the need for connection, for encouragement. Who has permission to ask me hard questions? Where can I be honest? Am I connected? Here's my questions for you. Are you able to identify? I want you to think about yourself right now. And I want to ask you, I want to invite you. Can you identify practices that over time you've abandoned? Did you used to check in with somebody or with a group of people? And you're not checking in with anybody anymore? Ask yourself, what was the need that was present? And where is that need being met today? If the need's not being met, you're drifting. What practices have you abandoned? What relationships have you neglected? Do you have strong, healthy community? That doesn't need to be a massive community. You don't need 10, 20, 50 people around you. But you better have two or three where you can be open and honest. What relationships are you neglecting? What needs are you pretending that you no longer have? And I'm going to go back to some of those needs real quick because these needs never go away. They are always present in every one of us to some degree. We have a need for connection, all of us. We all have a need for accountability. That's where people can speak into our lives if they see something foolish. That's where people have the freedom to ask hard questions. All of us have a need to be known, where we can be real, where we can be honest, and we're not going to receive shame and judgment. We all need support. All of us have times when we need help. I'm getting ready to have some surgery on my leg. I don't have the date yet. But you know what? One of the first things that the surgeon told me, I live about a half hour from where I'm going to have to go to get this surgery. And one of the first things that he told me is when you have the surgery, you're not going to be allowed to drive for 48 hours. Guess what? I'm going to have help. And I want you to know I have people in my life, more than one. I have a group of people in my life where, as I make that need known, I've already had multiple people step up and say, you let me know when that's going to take place, and I can be there. I'll drive you, I'll help you, I'll take care of it. We all have a need for support, and we always will have that need. And we all have a need for purpose. We need to feel and believe that we're accomplishing something in life. Those needs are always going to be present. What needs are you pretending that you no longer have? Recovery is not about becoming a person with no needs. That's not recovery. That's foolishness. You can never become a person with no needs. Recovery is about learning to recognize your needs and learning to meet those needs in a healthy way. So, as I close tonight, I got a couple more questions for you. I'd invite you, if you have a pencil and paper, write these down, think about them, consider these things. What need has recovery helped you identify that you still need today? Are there needs you've identified while you're in recovery that you recognize are still present? I can tell you, I have to have a place for safe community. I cannot function and exist in a healthy way without that place for community. That's one of the primary needs that's present in my life. The next question that's connected to that is how are you meeting that need in a healthy way? Or are you meeting that need currently in a healthy way? The goal of recovery isn't simply to stop acting out. It isn't simply to stop the behavior that's causing the pain. The goal of recovery is to build a life where your deepest needs, your most real needs in your life are consistently met in healthy ways so that drift no longer has the same power over you. Needs will always be present in your life. They'll always be present in my life. And if I don't have a healthy, safe way to meet those needs, then I'm going to be pushed along in whatever current is present around me. And that current is going to carry me to places that are just not safe for me to be. Identify the needs. What are the needs that are present in your life? That's my thoughts for you this week. I do want to let you know next week, I'll be back next Tuesday evening. Next week, I'm sorting out what the title's going to be, but I'll give you what I'm leaning towards with the title. Is next week we're going to talk about the stories that we tell ourselves. Why how we think matters and what we think matters. The stories that we tell ourselves. And so we'll be back here next Tuesday. I want to invite you to come back, join with us again next week. I want to hear your comments. I want to hear questions. I want to hear your thoughts. I don't want to be here by myself. And I want to invite you, if you know somebody that the things that we're talking about here on Tuesday evenings could be beneficial for, I would invite you to let them know and invite them to attend with you next week when we get together again for Let's Talk Recovery, 8 p.m. next Tuesday. I want to thank everybody for being with me this evening, and I hope you have a good evening. And I'm actually going to go into the other room and get me some cobbler and some ice cream. And I'm going to tell myself that that's a need that I need to take care of. All right. Everybody have a good evening. If you're watching this later in the replay on Facebook, on YouTube, if you have any questions, you have any comments, leave those. Feel free to visit my website. Feel free to shoot me an email at rwcoaching2@gmail.com. I'd be interested in knowing if you have any questions or comments about anything that we've talked about here this evening. And I will see everybody next Tuesday. Have a good night.